But when you're a leader and you have people who are responsible in your company and you're responsible to them to make sure that they're getting their payroll and all the things that go along with that, what I see is this network that's everybody's plugged into this one person, to the leader. And so in some ways, the leader kind of takes on the co-regulation responsibilities for the entire organization. So not only do you have a sense of your own emotions, not only are you trying to regulate your own nervous system, you've got all of these people, sometimes even literally feel in your field, tapping into you as well.
Welcome to the Firestarter Podcast. I'm Willa Kammerer. Today we're talking about a topic that is just so important to acknowledge as entrepreneurs, as anyone trying to build anything in this world, and it's burnout. And how burnout really isn't the problem. Burnout's just the signal. And to have that conversation, we're joined by Robyn McKay, friend, Firestarter client, and just an amazing leader and healer. And I'm just so grateful to be here and have this conversation with you.
I'm so happy to be here too. I've been a Firestarter for a long time and now it's official.
Exactly. Welcome. And just coming home, right?
Yeah, really.
So happy so happy to be here with you. Walk us back a little bit about your personal journey, your professional journey. How have you come to this place of really rooting in burnout as being a place where you're really focusing your work today?
Well, listen, all the other topics were taken. Let's be honest. Like if I could choose any other topic, it probably would have been more exciting. But the truth is I work with high performers. I always have. I'm a high performer. And with my PhD in counseling psychology in the years I've worked as a counselor and as a coach and a mentor for other really talented people, one of the key things that comes out of our lives is burnout. And we point to burnout, especially I think right around the time COVID really came onto the scene. That's when everyone started talking about burnout, because at that point, everyone had reached capacity to between family and work and navigating the stressors of health and well-being and everything at that time. I think that was just really a turning point in terms of what we were talking about. But here's the thing, Willa, that when we're little kids and you get good grades in school and you're a go-getter and you're a high achiever and you do all the things right and you check all of the boxes, one of the things that can happen because you put so much energy into the thing that you're most wanting to create in the world is that you can run low on gas, obviously. So over and over, whether I'm talking to women engineers, physicians, allied health professionals, entrepreneurs, burnout is the thing that they point to. Now, the thing about burnout, though, is that you can recover from burnout. And I actually am really good at helping people recover from burnout. But the problem with it is that wherever you go, there you are. And so if it's just a matter of getting more sleep and taking your omega-3 fatty acids and maybe meditating and, getting a massage and doing some different things in your behaviors, that's one thing. And that can keep you going for a while. It can get you up to about half a tank. But we as humans are designed, I think, to evolve and to continue to create. And one of the challenges when you're burned out is that you just keep replicating what you've done before over and over again. In fact, one of the things that I hear a lot with my clients is, I just want to get off the gerbil wheel. Can you relate to that?
Yeah. And I think another word that you use that really hit home is something that I've been thinking about a lot is this word capacity.
Yes.
And I think that you think of burnout and in the abstract, one might think that it's all kind of negative things leading to burnout. And in my own experience, sometimes it's all good things.
Yes.
It's just beyond the capacity for one person to be able to kind of that gas tank analogy to kind of handle it or water pouring over a cup. They can be
all good things at this point. I talked about COVID, but let's talk about now. Things are going really well. Business is great, right? But especially when you're a leader, whether you're leading your own company or you're part of a corporate structure, like you have a lot of responsibility, and it is that actual burden of responsibility, the duties, the obligations, the making sure that clients are well taken care of and home is well taken care of. It reminds me, when I was a little kid, there was this commercial for Ginate perfume or something. It was body wash. And it was, I can bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan and never let you forget you're the man. Like that was the energy of the, late 70s that I watched when I was a little girl, thinking, oh, well, I have to do all of those things. And one of the challenges, especially for women who are very accomplished and ambitious, is that we hold that belief, which happens to actually be misaligned. It's like not the whole truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, dig into that a little bit more. And I'd love to. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that when I talk about burnout as a signal, burnout, we can look at it as a problem, which we've already talked about. Like you can fix burnout. You could even fix burnout by like going on a intentional retreat, or not just vacation, but like doing intentional things outside of work to help yourself feel better. But when we dig under burnout, what I see more often than not is something that I call moral injury. And moral injury is, there are a lot of ways that we can describe that, but let me just give an example. It's like you're a little kid, you get told if you do all of these things and if you check all of these boxes, you're going to accomplish great things. You can be whatever you want to when you grow up. The sky is the limit, right? And then you reach the certain level of accomplishment. Maybe you've got the corner office or you've got the multi-7-figure business or whatever, and you stop and you look around and you think, is this all there is? Because I checked all the boxes, and we have this expectation that we're going to reach that pinnacle and we're going to feel a certain way, or we're going to get the reward at the end, and there's no reward. There's just another mountain to climb. So that's one way of looking at moral injury. Another way is just throughout our lives, we have this expectation that people are going to work as hard as we do and give as much as we do and offer their blood, sweat, and tears as much as we do. And oftentimes that's not the case. And so it can be in the form of betrayal. It can be in the form of disappointment, of giving your whole life to your career. And then at a point in your life where you need something, maybe you have a kid who's sick and you need to take some extra time to take care of that baby, or you've got a health crisis or whatever. Maybe the company doesn't reciprocate. And that it can go beyond disappointment into literal injury. And that's what I'm actually very interested in supporting people on, because when we look at moral injury, then we have to look at, who did I become in order to get to this place? And I have to heal from that injury. And then once I heal from the injury, I have some decisions to make about the direction I want to take my life. And maybe it looks a whole like it did before I went through this process, but maybe it looks quite a bit different. Yeah.
I've been thinking as you've been talking, what do you see as the relationship between alignment, burnout, moral injury? Is it possible to be fully aligned and burned out at the same time? Like how do they relate to each other?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person, and I think it depends on how aligned you are to begin with. But if you're an accomplished person, clearly you've had enough alignment to achieve a lot in your life. And so, yes, there can be alignment, but there also can be, as I said, that burden of responsibility, duty, obligation, the pressure that, have you ever woken up in the morning and just felt this immense heaviness? As much as you love your clients, as much as you love your company, there's this immense heaviness that when you're bearing that burden by yourself or with maybe one or two other people, it feels immense. Yeah. And I always look at that as, an invitation to dig into like what's going on behind the scenes there. I know that for me in my life, where that's really shown up for me is the further I drifted away from my identity as somebody who loves God and who is a Catholic person, the further I drifted away from that, the heavier everything became, because I, like so many of us, and especially in entrepreneurship, this time in the world where we're talking about manifestation and metaphysics, and you're the creator of your experience, you're the creator of your life. There's some good stuff in there, but ultimately for me, what really felt empty and hollow is that pinnacle of success, but still feeling that huge burden of I had to do this all by myself. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. And just that heaviness. I think for me, some of the heaviness of, walking the path and feeling like you're alone and having to carry, I think also navigating just the people responsibilities has been, one of the hardest and heaviest things. Because just wanting to do well and by people, yet at the same time, it's complex.
when you're a leader, I was just sharing this with somebody the other day she's a very well-known leader in her space and is responsible for, multi-millions of dollars, maybe even up to billions of dollars in her contracts. And she's got a company who looks to her as a leader. She's the founder of it. And I always read nervous systems, right, to see, I look at the data, and then I'm also like tuning into how the nervous system is functioning. And when somebody is burned out, you're gonna see more anxiety, depression, even sometimes a sense of isolation, just kind of I call it being wired red hot, having a red hot nervous system. But when you're a leader and you have people who are responsible in your company, and you're responsible to them to make sure that they're, getting their payroll and all the things that go along with that. What I see is this network that's everybody's plugged into this one person, to the leader. Mm-hmm. And so in some ways, the leader kind of takes on the co-regulation responsibilities for the entire organization. So not only do you have a sense of your own emotions, not only are you trying to regulate your own nervous system, you've got all of these people who you can literally, sometimes even literally feel in your field tapping into you as well. So that's one thing that when I talk to leaders about this heaviness, we also have to look at, like, what's the effect of people tapping into your field in order to feel safe, feel secure, look for leadership, look for guidance, look for encouragement, all of the things that we want our people to do. And yet the cost can take a toll on us. I find it especially with women leaders.
Yeah. Absolutely. It is so interesting though. It's not just in person. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm in a virtual meeting and you can just feel, the energy of the room. And
I want to say not everybody can do that. Mm-hmm. There are people who I call us hyper-empaths, but we really do have the capacity to not just experience our own emotions, but really to pick up on a sense of the vibe in the room, to be able to read the room. I know this is going to date me, but a long time ago when I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, I lived in Kansas. And my company was in California, and I was at a star phone. You remember star phones in the middle of the table a lot? I was running calls and things like that. And I could sit at my desk in Kansas and tune in. I knew everybody in the room, but I could tune in and tell, okay, what does Carl have to say over here that he's not saying, or whatever? And people would comment on that, like, you're not even here. How do you know that? But it just is like, it's not, as I said, not everybody can do that. But those of us who have these really refined nervous systems never get taught. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it's yours. Mm-hmm. And unless you understand that and can really discern what's mine and what somebody else's, that's another layer of the heaviness that we can experience as leaders that contributes to burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. Relate.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, to that kind of like extra sense of just that sense of responsibility for the things being unsaid, the experiences of other people. Mm-hmm. How can we begin to protect ourselves, to kind of hold what's ours and what's ours responsibility, and kind of building up a shield sounds negative,
but you're right on target. In fact, I have a protocol for that I give to my clients to listen to, because and address every single day, because I really think that energy hygiene has to become like washing your hands, brushing your teeth, and taking good care of your skin every single day to do your energy work and to make sure that your field is clear. Because people, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, I mean, energy is real. And even if you can't see it, doesn't mean it's not there. It just is a subtle energy that can really take a toll on your field. So yes, there is a protocol that I have for that, but it does involve just going through your field and clearing everything out and making sure that you do have a shield around you, if you will. I personally like the Archangel Michael. I got to tell you, like, that Archangel Michael is a good one to have on your team in terms of working with the archangels. That's the defend us in battle and protect us, right? That's the whole thing. But it goes beyond just saying the prayer. It's actually doing the energy work that accompanies it.
I would love to hear about some of the different modalities that you incorporate with clients, and where each has its piece,
Yeah.
right? You know, where does kind of like
Sure.
Western medicine end and some of these other things pick up to be helpful?
I love that. So I'm trained, I have a PhD in counseling psychology and was trained as a clinician and worked for the early part of my professional career as a psychologist at the university, at Arizona State University, actually, here in town. But so counseling psychology and clinical psychology really focus on mental well-being, mental health and well-being. And specifically, I focused on the psychology of gifted and talented people. So helping them understand their social, emotional, career, and spiritual needs is basically the complex nature of that work, because people who have fast brains in our heads can figure things out quickly, make sense of things, aren't always well understood by most clinicians. There's a layer that needs to be attended to that often is not, unless we have that perspective. So that is foundational. The other foundational piece to me is my Catholicism. Now, I will say this, that I am what's called a revert. I had no idea that this was a thing until recently, but it's somebody, I was raised Catholic and went to Mass every Sunday and did all my sacraments and everything. And I was also simultaneously aware that I was intuitive and trying to really figure out, like, how do I understand my own identity as a healer, as a leader, and what does all of this mean? So, you know, a lot of my work, I would say, there's a saying, research is me search. And I really think that a lot of what I've done throughout my career has to do with understanding myself, my identity, who I am, and what I'm meant to be doing in this world. And that, in fact, is a lot of times what my clients come in with. Ultimately, they might present with burnout. Maybe they present with moral injury, but ultimately it's like, who am I and what am I supposed to be doing here? And on top of that, is this all there is? And that was one of my major questions when I had a quarter life crisis when I was about 28. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, this is not what I envisioned when I was 18 and fearless. And so simultaneously to getting my PhD in counseling psychology, I was on a 7-year apprenticeship in spiritual intelligence, where I really did, like, I went to the edges of the universe to learn as much as I could about the different religions and energy traditions and everything that I could think of, because I really wanted to, I just wanted to understand. I'm a smart girl in my heart, and that needing to know is just, it's such a driver. Maybe you can relate to that.
Yeah.
So when I began to integrate the spirituality with the clinical work, I think that that's probably the place that it brought me to being able to be in entrepreneurship and to start my boutique practice, to work with the accomplished women I do work with, who are quite a bit like me, actually, high achieving and open to new experiences and emotionally intelligent, with nervous systems that can get a little bit squirrely. So all this to say that those pieces of the puzzle really set the foundation for the work that I do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on.
It sounds like a toolbox. I love that, so you can kind of, depending on, draw
it is, but
need.
the key is, and you mentioned this when you talked about these influencers who have maybe weekend certification and they've got, like, millions of followers or whatever, and they don't have the foundation, the clinical foundation, to be able to actually help people, and actually can do more damage than not. Not necessarily even out of malevolence, but just out of, like, dare I say, incompetence, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And because you can, right?
Yeah, because you can. And, I think that when it comes down to it at this point in my life, discernment is such a big piece for me, because here's what I have learned in all of my personal work and professional work. Just because something is spiritual does not mean it is from God. Mm-hmm. And we live on a very dark planet. And there are a lot of people who want to take advantage and want to harm. And some of them don't want to harm, and they do harm. We all do that to some degree. But for me right now, where I sit at this intersection, as I've returned to Catholicism and have really been deeply studying the mystics. Like, if somebody, I think at 18 would have said, hey, dude, like, there are, like, Catholic mystics who have these experiences like you have, like, you should study them. Nobody said that to me. Like, yeah. I'm like 18 and going, well, maybe I'll go study shamanism instead, because I didn't know. But that was just part of the journey, and that's okay. And coming back home to Catholicism and foundationally understanding the Catholic mysticism as part of like who I am grounds everything in a way that I feel very confident and secure in who I am. And I don't have to question like what's the best, like people can come in and work with me or not. The people who are designed to work with me, I always pray, I say, just please God, write my name on their hearts and write their names on my heart, and we'll find each other and God will help us with that. But I really look at like, that's a perspective that I come from. And I've left manifestation culture primarily because I kind of referenced this earlier that, gosh, like it's exhausting. I remember learning early on in my spiritual development when I was in my 30s, when I was doing all my studies about, it was not law of attraction. It was more like universal law and first cause. And I remember one of my teachers saying, "You're the first cause, Robyn." And I'm like, okay, well, that's weird. But I took it and I'm like, okay, if I'm the first cause, then I have a huge responsibility, which is exhausting. And it actually is not true. From where I sit now, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to go back to what does the Catholic Catechism say about first cause? Well, God's the creator of the universe. The universe is not first cause. God created the universe. God created me. I'm a creature of his creation, and God wants to work with me, to co-create with me.
Well, I just love, you've just like, this has been
It's a
continually
journey.
evolving.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, as now a client, which I'm so, thrilled to be supporting you, kind of like helping externalize and have, all that you are here to share, to have that fully aligned with how you're communicating that with the world, the brand that represents you, everything that you're saying.
It's really kind of, it's a weird place to be in because I've been in metaphysics and manifestation. I've been teaching that stuff, wealth consciousness, for years. My first as foray into entrepreneurship 13 years ago was the psychology of women making money. And it was all a lot of it was metaphysics. Some of it was psychology and healing the money wounds and things like that. But like, it's a long time in that space. And then coming back into this intersection where I am right now is kind of like, oh boy, how's this going to work?
Yeah. Well, I always say that, our personal brands and businesses, they're always going to be evolving, and we can never think about it as a destination, but just something that, if we can be more peaceful if we just acknowledge that it's going to be continually evolving. And a personal brand, it's called a personal brand because it reflects us. And we're never done growing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think there's so much noise out there around just, niche down and be one thing. But I personally think that your superpower and so many people's superpowers are at the intersection, and all of the things that you combine from your own journey and bring into your work with your clients that make you absolutely, unique category of one. And, our job at Firestarter is to really bring that out in the most authentic way possible. So it's an honor.
Thank you. So you're going to put me on the spot.
I did. No, I just
did.
You did?
Just okay. I thought you were going to, I thought there was more.
Just talking about, your own kind of like where you are in, your own kind of brand and business journey, and how that's, how everything that we've talked about is kind of externalized in your identity that you're sharing.
Yeah,
online.
it's really been interesting, especially with my current clients, because I don't have, what I was going to say is, trained as I was as a psychologist, my whole training is about receiving people where they are. So I don't have an expectation that everybody who shows up at my door is going to be, a Catholic revert who whatever, likes to do yoga retreats or something like that. But that what my clients, I've been very transparent about my entire journey as I've gone through this, everything from, I did a whole podcast series called Bewitched, Breaking the Spell After Spiritual Mentoring Goes Wrong, because there was a spiritual mentor in my life and several other women's lives who really did a lot of damage. That's where I got the discernment piece. And that was actually the impetus for me to come back home to Catholicism as foundational. So I thank God for that, really. But also, like, the clients who work with me now, I've just been very transparent. This is where I sit. And they are receptive to that. I think that they're grateful that I'm transparent about where it is. I don't expect them to do anything other than, if they want to work with me, this is what they're going to get in terms of my transparency and how I understand the world, to be given all of these experiences that I've had. And let me tell you, there's a lot.
All of us.
I mean,
yeah. And I think part of our job and part of, my theory of building a brand and presence online is to be authentic, share that fullness, and that will magnetize and bring in those right people. We don't need to be everything to all people.
Yes, I agree. And I think that I was reflecting on this over the weekend. I was up in Sedona with my husband. Sedona's our favorite. I always say Sedona's a really good idea, no matter what.
It is.
Right? I know you were just there too. And I was reflecting on my whole journey in entrepreneurship. And I remember having this feeling every time I would launch something. I'm really good at like making stuff happen on my own, like really good. I can, if I decide I'm going to do something, I can roll it out and launch it and it goes, right? But every time I would do that, I always felt this like discomfort at the very core. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. Like, this isn't quite right. But I couldn't name it. And I didn't know. I just thought, because you hear that in business a lot, feel the fear and do it anyway, right? There are these kind of colloquialisms that we grow up with in entrepreneurship. And so I would do that. But like when I got really honest over the weekend about that, I understand now that was my conscience saying, you need to come home. You have to come home. Because now where I sit, that's largely absent. And if it is present, I listen to it because I know that there is something there that has to be fully aligned, not with my will, but with God's will. And can we talk about that for just a second? Yeah. I used to hate that, God's will. Like, that feels so scary and everything. Well, I learned this in my studies. God's will, two things: mercy and love. Align with mercy and love. I was like, when I read that, I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. And for me right now, that to me is my definition of success, is to simply align my will with God's will.
Yeah. Well, you can see the peace in you.
Thank
and
you.
I think you have, so many gifts that
Thank you.
The people who intersect with you are, lucky to do so.
Well, I feel lucky to be with you too. It's just been lovely to meet you and to be part of this.
We should share our story.
Let's do. Oh my gosh, you guys.
We're doing better now, but we were sitting here with microphones. We were in Las Vegas a month ago, and there were a row of about 4 or 5 microphones. We were doing a group interview with our mutual friend and broadcaster authority, Tamara Thompson, and we were both very sick.
Oh my goodness.
And we were the sick end of the of the interview lineup. And Las Vegas is not a very fun place to be sick either.
And I remember being in 4th grade and being probably as sick as I was a month ago. It doesn't happen very often, but it can lay me out. And I remember in 4th grade, like having to cough, and for some reason feeling like I couldn't because I needed to be quiet. And that was exactly how I felt. And all of a sudden I'm just like had this outburst of coughing. There was nothing I could do. And you were so sweet to just hang out with me over on the sick end of the table.
Well, we were bonding over cough drops, and I was coughing at night. I wasn't coughing in the morning, but I was, and I'm Miss Au Naturel, really take anything, but I was on like all of the
Alka-Seltzer. I know. I have my whole concoction that I do. And I was listening to one of the podcasts that I recorded that day, and I can hear the congestion and anyway. It was
I'm happy we're on the other side of it, but I'm also happy that, it was our point of connection.
I know.
It was something we can laugh about now.
Yes.
That we
besides your great pink pants.
Thank you. Well, I love this. Yes. Love this getup as well.
Thank you.
Just grateful for you, Robyn. And where can our listeners find you and learn more about your work?
Gosh. Well, you can find me on Instagram, Robyn McKay, PhD. I love hanging out over on TikTok too, which the handle is Burnout is Data. Actually, that's the new handle at Instagram too, is Burnout is Data. So find me there, and I will love to connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Robyn. And thanks so much for tuning in for another episode of the Firestarter Podcast. You can find all of Robyn's links and more in the show notes at thefirestarterpodcast.com. And we would love for you to become a Firestarter too. You can learn more about everything that we're building at Firestarter at firestarterfunnels.com. And we have an extra special for podcast listeners only. You can join our platform and community and save on your first 3 months of your subscription with the code podcast. So that's at firestarterfunnels.com. And thanks so much for tuning in for another episode. Find us on my YouTube channel at Willa Kammerer. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram at Willa Kammerer. And of course, listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So we look forward to the next conversation on the Firestarter Podcast.